Chapter 1789, The Day of Fall. The Fremon's side was very cold towards Zhang Yi's team. Zhang Yi was not angry, but only took their attitude of using people forward and not backward to heart. There will be encounters in the mountains and rivers, and sooner or later there will be a day to return the favor. Zhang Yi is in no hurry at all. Moreover, he believes that with the arrival of reinforcements from all over the world, the conflict between the human army and the mechanical civilization will become increasingly acute. He chose to wait and see what would happen before taking the next step. Fremons could read people, so why shouldn't he? If there was no benefit, he would only repay Fremons for his previous support to a certain extent. As the saying goes, profit comes first. Even between the Huashu Kingdom and Fremons, it would be ridiculous to talk about emotions. Let's go back first, and let Karen and Xinshin study those things for a couple of days. Zhang Yi turned to Lu Karen and held out his hand. Lu Karen hurriedly ran over to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi asked, "Is there any way to repair the tens of thousands of mechanical life forms we obtained and turn them into our own mechanical army?" Lu Karen nodded. "Of course. Their materials are very advanced, but I can replicate them with my abilities. However, its source code is very complicated. It's a completely different route from human mechanical technology, and whether we can crack it depends on Xinshin. Well, to put it another way, the difference between the mechanical language of mechanical civilization and that of humans is like the difference between Chinese and English. We first need to crack it completely." Zhang Yi asked curiously, "Can't we just rewrite it in human mechanical language?" Yang Xinshin explained, "The mechanical language of mechanical civilization is more advanced and efficient than that of humans. If we implant our mechanical language into it, the resulting product may only have 1/3 the performance of the original." Zhang Yi could not help but exclaim, "This is the power of technology. So, can we ensure technological leadership in this area? We must build the mechanical army before any other country." Lu Karen beamed with pride when this was mentioned. "Brother, if I'm not wrong, they would have difficulty opening the source even now to observe its internal structure. That was a material even harder than diamond, with no gaps whatsoever. Human technical means were simply unable to open it without causing damage. Fremon's research had been carried out by forcibly splitting it open with a laser sword, but this would inevitably lead to damage inside, greatly affecting research efficiency. Moreover, even if they spend a long time and a great deal of energy studying its operating principles, they would have no technical means of duplicating it." Lu Karen was different. Her hands were the hands of a god. The divine machinist could even make her hands penetrate matter like water, separating the energy source without damaging its outer shell. In other words, we will be the first human organization in the world to obtain this technology? Zhang Yi smiled, his eyes filled with joy. Tianhai City had a population of only tens of thousands, and issues such as their clothing, food, housing, transportation, and loyalty had to be considered. But if mechanical life forms could replace humans, then many things would become much simpler. "In theory, yes, brother," Lu Karen said. "Good. In the meantime, you don't need to think about anything else, just focus on cracking the secret of the mechanical lifeform source." Zhang Yi encouraged Lu Karen. The group arrived at the residence Fremons had arranged for them. Zhang Yi removed the soldiers stationed here and instead had the Volt Shadow Troop take charge of the perimeter security. However, shortly after he arrived here, someone came looking for him. He was an old friend of Zhang Yi's, the thunder god Pern of the Pantheon, the bearded Alexe Ivanov. He came over carrying 2 large bottles of vodka and a large bag of things under his arm. Zhang Yi's face broke into a genuine smile when he saw Alexe. Time with Alexe had not been long, but the simple, big Fremon's man had earned his respect. A person's behavior in the face of life and death does not lie. During the battle against the fake Hades gatekeeper, Alexei's reckless fighting style had proven that he was a trustworthy person. So later, when he was recovering from his injuries in Blizzard City, Zhang Yi also visited him from time to time. "My friends, welcome to Fremons," Alexe said, shaking the vodka in his hand and placing a large package he was carrying under his arm on the table. Zhang Yi and the others happened to have not eaten yet, so they took out the food from dimensional space and prepared to eat. Seeing the things Alexe had brought, the group laughed. They turned out to be several strings of handmade red sausage, each as thick as Alexe's arm. Alexe said that his wife had made them by hand. Zhang Yi and the others did not stand on ceremony with him, and they all sat down to eat together. It had been a while since they had last met, and Zhang Yi could only feel that Alexe had aged a little since he left the Huashu kingdom. His dark circles were a bit heavier, and there was less flesh on his face. It was clear that he had been busy recently. The group exchanged casual greetings about their recent situations and talked about the happenings in their respective families. Zhang Yi was naturally busy rebuilding the Tianhai fortress. When it came to Alexe's family, he let out a long sigh. Fremons has been in turmoil recently, and everyone is worried that those 10 guys will come over. Even my wife Natasha is always awakened from her sleep, hugging me and crying. Shokir couldn't help but put down her chopsticks and ask, "For a powerful mutant like you, doesn't your wife feel safe?" She and Zhang Yi had been together for 3 years. Over the course of those 3 years, they had experienced many storms and tempests, but no matter what happened, Zhang Yi would always protect them. Alexe was also a Black Chariot level Epsilon mutant, one of the best in the world. So Shokir was surprised. Alexe said helplessly, "You don't know what happened that day." He recounted that night when the Mechanical Legion attacked Karen City. Karen City was the capital of Fremons and the most powerful place in the entire Fremons armed forces. Not only did it have one of the world's top troops, it was also home to the mutants from the Pantheon. Even though the other regions were unstable, the higher-ups still concentrated the source's power here to ensure the safety of them and their families. However, no one expected that one night, without warning, mechanical life forms emerged from the ground like a tidal wave. All their advanced equipment and machinery became useless. The earth cracked open, houses collapsed, and Alexe's house was destroyed. They were awakened from their sleep, and his wife and child were exposed to the sub-zero temperatures and nearly froze to death. Alexe hurriedly protected his wife and daughter, while the city of Karen before him was full of people frozen to death in the cold wind, and huge mechanical life forms. One after another, these huge mechanical life forms, like giant ancient gods, stood everywhere in Karen, emitting beams of destruction that cut the city in half. Alexe paused here and took a large sip of vodka. Burp. He burped, looked at Zhang Yi and said, "You must be careful. Those guys are more powerful than you think." Fatty Su came over with a glass of wine, grinned, put his arm around Alexe's shoulder, and bragged, "Oh, Lao Xia. Don't worry. In the past, you didn't have enough troops to fight those 10 soldiers, so it's fine. Now, heh." He reached out and pounded his chest. "I, Marshal Tianpeng, arrived here under the leadership of my big brother Chaos, and easily settled that little matter for you. As you must also know, we just arrived in Fremons and eliminated tens of thousands of mechanical life forms. No effort at all." Alexe, however, shook his head. "No, the forces you encountered were just small detachments. You haven't encountered any truly formidable opponents." Zhang Yi exchanged glances with Deng Shintong, Lian Yu, and the others before continuing, "I've seen the videos you sent, and they're not much different from what we encountered. Even if the number of mechanical legions attacking Karen City is a bit higher, it's not that terrifying, is it?" Alexe bang. Placed his wine glass on the table. "Even if there are more of those things, we will have a way to deal with them. Chaos, haven't you noticed that they are actually all engineering robots?" This really made Zhang Yi a little stunned. "Engineering, robots? You mean, things similar to the tower cranes and mechanical arms we use?" He couldn't help but recall. Suddenly, he remembered a teasing remark he had made when chatting with Fatty Su and the others before. These mechanical lifeforms, despite their obvious powerful combat capabilities, are just wasting their time digging. But when you think about it, their structure is indeed more like that of construction machinery. Even those super-large mechanical lifeforms move a little sluggishly and clumsily. If they really were built for combat, it would be better to make them tracked combat vehicles or directly use air-to-space battleships. Even the mass-produced machines have very simple attack methods, and some even use cold weapons like engineer shovels. At first, Zhang Yi thought that was the characteristic weapon of another mechanical civilization. Now, after thinking about Alexe's words, it seems that they were really just dealing with an engineering unit. There was silence at the dinner table. If an engineering unit had already turned the entire Fremon's world upside down, just how powerful would combat-type mechanical lifeforms be? Zhang Yi looked at Alexe and said slowly, "A combat-type mechanical lifeform is the humanoid creature you once warned me about, isn't it?" Alexe took a big gulp of vodka, reached up and scratched his head, and then took a chip out of his bushy beard and handed it to Zhang Yi. "The Prodajas have been hiding important information from all of you. My friend, after reading this, you will understand." Zhang Yi took the chip and immediately understood what was going on. "You secretly kept this for yourself?" Alexe was a good person, but he was after all a member of the Fremon's pantheon. Zhang Yi never expected that he would give him important information behind the back of the pantheon. Zhang Yi himself couldn't help but wonder if this was a play by the pantheon. Alexe said frankly, "I'm not one of them. The pantheon is just an organization of mutants, and there are many factions within it. Prodaja represents the official side, the high-level administrative officials. As for me, I was only invited to join because I'm quite powerful. My original intention was to protect the citizens and my family and friends. But what they're doing, I can't tolerate anymore." Alexe looked at Zhang Yi. His face was completely red, but his eyes were exceptionally bright. The people Prodaja represents don't care about the lives of ordinary people. They only care about their own interests. So after you and the delegations of mutants from other countries arrived, they chose to push you to the front line, where you would be in the most danger. And in order to prevent you from running away, they withheld the most crucial information. I'm sorry, my friend, I don't know much. After all, I don't have access to their source. I can only tell you everything I know." Zhang Yi nodded and raised the glass in his hand towards Alexe. "Thank you very much for your sincerity, my friend. Cheers." With that, Zhang Yi gulped down the wine in his glass. They drank from day to night, but Alexe really could hold his alcohol, and in the end, he took off his shirt, draped it over his shoulders, and left in the cold wind of -100 degrees Celsius. After he left, Deng Shintong said, "As expected, there is internal conflict wherever there are people. What a hassle." Zhang Yi glanced at him and laughed disdainfully, "It's the same everywhere. Your Blizzard City can be divided into several factions, so don't mock others. Zhu Zheng, that old boy, was able to hide Zhu for his own benefit during the war against the Wulwan Empire. They have no right to judge others. Can Alexe be trusted? Is it possible that this is a plot between him and the Pantheon?" Deng Shintong asked. "I have my own brain," Zhang Yi responded indifferently. "One should never be suspicious of others, but one should always be on one's guard. Even if it's a friend, it's right to be a little more careful. Let's see what's on this chip." Zhang Yi shook the chip in his hand, used the intelligence system to read it, and then projected it directly in front of him. The image appeared in front of everyone, and what came into view was a night of blazing fire. The day Karen City fell, the image is recorded by Alexe's personal intelligence system. Zhang Yi focused intently on the scenes before him, the flickering black shadows reflecting on his pupils. He looked extremely carefully, and the hazy shadows of some of the battles were also firmly imprinted in his mind.